Greetings programs, welcome back to the Game Grid. You're back with Gaming Magic Mark and it's Baldur's Gate 3, and what I wanted to do was take the opportunity today to answer the question which I'm seeing quite a lot, which is which class is the easiest to pick up and use and get going and learn the game, Baldur's Gate 3. Which one would be the most realistic choice for those folks who maybe you're coming from a situation where you don't know Dungeons and Dragons that well, maybe you're coming from another role-playing game, for example, Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, or Wrath of the Righteous, for example. Another one might be Divinity Original Sin 2. Maybe you're a Larian fan and you want to pick up on their latest game, that's this, of course, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, but I don't know the first thing about Dungeons and Dragons, or even if you do, which class is going to give you a great start into the world of Baldur's Gate 3, The Forgotten Realms, and Dungeons and Dragons. And I think if we go back to 30, 40 years ago, early days of Dungeons and Dragons, this class has stood the test of time in terms of that. And I wanted to give an honourable mention before I tell you which class I'm going with, which is you could have gone with Barbarian, you could have gone with Ranger, you could have gone with Rogue. I think all three of those classes are also fairly easy to get to grips with. They offer just slightly more from a gameplay perspective than, say, the Fighter, at least initially anyway. And so they give you more choices on level up and maybe more customization in terms of, say, for example, the Ranger with their companions. You've got the Rogue with different types of subclasses which drastically alter the gameplay, and Barbarian, which is you're sort of managing your rage episodes and that kind of thing as a separate set of skills and abilities for managing incoming damage and things like that. All three of those classes are great to pick up. I'm not saying they aren't as easy as the Fighter. I just think the Fighter, for a newcomer to say Baldur's Gate 3, but specifically to Dungeons and Dragons, I think the fighter is going to be a great choice. Now I've got my fighter here. His name is Wick, imaginatively named, as you can probably see. And what I've got is him at level 5. That's the maximum in early access, of course. I don't think much of what we're going to talk about here is going to change during the move to full release in a few weeks' time. So I think we can safely say that fighter is going to be one of the easiest to get to grips with. Fighters have mastered the art of combat, wielding weapons with unmatched skill and wearing armor like a second skin. The great thing about fighters is whenever you find items like weapons and armor, go mad. Any one of them will work for you. You're able to use all types of armor, all types of weapons, shields, and so forth. And so you've got a lot of options in terms of how you kit out your fighter. You could even have groups of fighters in a single party, so you can have two fighters and they might feel very different from each other. Such is that way of customizing the fighter. It's not terribly complicated, but you can get a very different playstyle. So you could have, for example, a fighter with a shield and a single-handed weapon, and they are the frontline tank. You could have a fighter with a great sword, for example, like the Everburn Blade here. You could have a fighter with a great axe, for example, or dual wielding two single-handed weapons. That's awesome. The other thing is your choice of race and your choice of background might give you vastly different skills as you level up. For example, a Githyanki fighter will feel a little bit different from a Lolth-sworn drow like this one, because of the abilities that they get as part of their race, and as you level up. Also, equally, your background, such as Urchin, which I've chosen here, might actually allow you to act almost like a rogue in that sense. Other backgrounds will give you other capabilities that might give you more of a focus to, be more of the intimidator, persuader, deceptor in your role-playing, in conversations and in interactions that are not combat-based. So fighters can feel very different, even though there might be multiples of them in the party. What I want to do now is just take you through the levels and the significant level ups that you will take, or the significant levels and choices you make as a fighter. So here we are, as promised, at the first level fighter character creation screen, and of course, again, your race and your origin will have an effect. From a class perspective, fighter has at level 1 one of the most significant decisions to make, And so that's the only kind of situation where you might think, oh, am I going to make a mistake? And of course, the answer is no, because at a later time in your playthrough, you'll certainly be able to respec your fighter. So you'll also be able to do things like multi-classing, so that even if you make a poor choice here, you could potentially change it on a respec, or you could change it by, or change your focus by actually multi-classing into another class. And at level 3, which I'll show you in just a moment, you also get the chance to subclass in fighter, and that gives you some significant playstyle changes. The first thing that you have to choose is fighting style, and so this is where two fighters could be significantly different, like I was mentioning before. For example, you can have an archery focused fighter, you could have a defense focused fighter, you could have a great weapon fighting fighter, you could have a protection fighter, and each of those will give you different abilities or different passive features that allow you to respond and play in a certain way. So if you wanted to be a bow wielding fighter from the back of the battlefield and actually strike in combat from range, you can do that with the archery focus. Great weapon fighter is more of a damage dealer, whereas a protection or a defense focused fighter will have potentially more defense and be a better tank for the party. Um, the other thing to say about fighters is that they get a great couple of abilities, like Second Wind, for example. On level 1, you get that ability, which gives you a personal healing ability as a bonus action. What that means is that you potentially could move and attack, or move and do something significant as a main action, and also as a bonus action you could heal yourself. So it's much easier to keep a fighter alive just with that particular ability, even if you don't have, or you have clerics or other healers in the party, but who have maybe expended their spells or abilities to heal you. So that's very cool. And then what we're going to do now is take a look at, for example, the level 3 level up, which is the next and probably the greatest choice to make as a fighter. So here we are at level 3 with Lae'zel, who's one of the origin characters, and great fun at that. She's a fighter as well. Now you might be thinking, like I said before, you might be thinking, well, hang on, if I want to run with Lae'zel in my party, then does that mean that I'm not going to be able to run with another fighter, or should it not be a case that I run with another fighter? And as I said before, absolutely not, because Lae'zel could be any of the roles that a fighter can take, but maybe she could be your tank or your damage dealer, or you can, both coexist with different subclasses, and that's really what I want to take a look at now. Lae'zel, for example, could potentially be a battle master, and your character could choose Eldritch Knight or Champion. Each will have a very significantly different playstyle, and that's before we even get into things like multi-classing. And again, if you make the wrong choice, you can respec later in the game, so that isn't a set in stone and having to restart the whole game just to get to grips with the mistake that you've made or your perceived mistake. Level 3 is a great level up for a fighter, because what you end up doing is you obviously get more hit points, etc., but you also choose your subclass, and that might be Battlemaster or Eldritch Knight, or one we don't see here but we will see on launch, called Champion. Now I think in terms of simplicity of play, and if you're looking for the easiest class to play, then probably Champion or Battlemaster, depending on how things shape up at launch, will be your best choice. Now I think of the two that are shown here, Battlemaster is definitely simpler than Eldritch Knight and easier to get to grips with. Battlemaster simply gives you superiority dice, which are effectively like a resource that you can regain on a short or long rest, and they will power powerful combat maneuvers that will either be responses or actual attacks that you do and can achieve a certain aim. So you're not only attacking, but you might be frightening a foe with menacing attack. You might be attacking and also pushing a foe, a target back in one action. Riposte will be a response, so a reaction where someone will attack you and you can respond in kind when it's a melee attack. You could trip or disarm an opponent. The other thing you can do is you can actually bolster one of your colleagues in your group with a rally. And that's actually a great skill to have. It makes your party a little bit more resilient because your fighters can then buff your other characters with temporary hit points that actually, will keep them alive for a little while. So it's not like a heal, but it will actually almost act as one, like almost like an eight hit point damage shield for your other characters, and it means that they can, stay alive longer than they would, for example. Awesome ability there. And remember that your choice of race also dictates what you might get as you level up. For example, Githyanki will have psionics, which act almost like spells, in this case, a jump. The other thing is, I want to just pick up, if I just go away from Lae'zel here for a second and actually look at her combat bar. Action Surge is something that you get as an additional ability, and that actually allows you to push yourself beyond your limits. So I think that you get that at level 2. You gain an extra action. Now, what that means is that you gain an extra full action, not a bonus action, but that means that you could potentially attack again, which is awesome. So fighters get that extra attack very early on and an additional attack at level 5. So you'll get another attack at level 5 in addition to potentially using that once per short rest, that action surge, which is amazing. So fighters are very well rounded in that they get their own personal heal. They also get their action surge ability very early on, giving you potentially an extra attack. And in addition to that, they also get potentially at level 3 the ability to riposte or rally as reactions or as party helping buffs. So they make great party members in that sense. Now, just going back into Lae'zel just one more time for her level up, I just wanted to introduce you to Eldritch Knight, and we'll sort of leave things at that because I think I've covered most of what I wanted to say about fighters. But Eldritch Knight is then a significantly different playstyle. I wouldn't say it's the easiest of the fighter subclasses to pick, but it does then take you down a spellcasting route. So instead of getting your combat maneuvers, you will get spells to use, just as though you had levels in, say, Wizard, for example. So you'd have to customize the spells that you take. It's obviously a more, say, limited spell group, or spell book, I should say, and customize the cantrips that you take as well. So you'd be able to get some certain abilities as spells that actually are very cool to add on to your fighter-like abilities. So you could say, okay, I've gotten to grips with the combat skills, the melee skills, the ranged combat skills. Now I want a little bit of spell casting. So you could dip into that just through the subclass alone and go Eldritch Knight. You could dip into it with multi-classing, which would take you down a whole different route. And then you would be taking levels in another class or in multiple other classes, potentially. So Fighter is a great, easy way to get started in Baldur's Gate 3, and I really think that it's well worth the look. And I think at level 5 with that second attack that you get, which is significant, I think it's awesome. Those of you who were hoping I'd go into, say, Barbarian or Ranger or Rogue as other easy classes to get to grips with, I'll try to make further videos that then touch on those. But those are also, again, great classes to think of at the start if you don't feel like you want a complex class to start to learn the game with. So I hope that was useful to you, and thanks so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know which is your favorite class, and did I get it wrong? Should I not have chosen Fighter? Tell me in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.